Hello, and welcome to the Game Room. I'm your host, Trevor. In this video, I will answer 20 questions asked by Tetsubo57 on his channel, 20 questions about D20. And now, without further ado, here are your 20 answers. Question 1. Ability Scores Generation Method. I always use a point buy method, and in D20 I tend to use a point buy of 30. So the player characters in those games are definitely a cut above. I think a lot of people use 25, but I actually prefer the 30, so that these are big damn heroes, is what I'm saying. Question 2. How are death and dying handled? Mechanically, I handle it like in the book, except with one tweak. Instead of going to -10 and the character dies, I use negative whatever their constitution is. So a robust dwarf with an 18 constitution will last a bit longer. Thematically, how I handle death and dying is if a character dies by the dice rolls in a very inconvenient time and it's really mucking up the story, I will actually say, your character is now doomed, and they will avoid this death in some, in-game appropriate way. An arrow hits him in the chest but misses their heart, and the cleric manages to save them. But, I tell the player, at the next thematically appropriate moment, your character will die. So get into your head an awesome soliloquy or some way in which you want to go out in a blaze of glory. Question 3. What about raising the dead? I do not use resurrection because I, quite frankly, cannot wrap my head around a world in which paying gold to an organization will return you from the dead. I mean, just imagine the socio-economic ramifications of such a thing. It also, when there's no resurrection, it also makes the world much more dangerous when you know that every battle that you face could be your last. So it makes you think about things. So typically, I don't use resurrection except in perhaps massive, massively different cases, like the greatest hero that the land has ever known, a true champion of one of the gods, may have some sort of saving grace, some sort of guardian angel that might bring them back. But these things are truly pieces of legend. Question 4. How are replacement PCs handled? I try to bring in a new PC when it's story appropriate. If someone just eats it during a dungeon, they don't open up a treasure chest and a dwarf pops out and is like, "Hey, guess what? I'm gonna join your party." I'll just drop my dice. And when I do replace a PC, typically they will be at whatever level that the party is, or whatever level the average of the party is. Then let's say everyone is into level, like everyone's halfway through level 4. If someone dies and a new character joins up, they will be right at the EXP for level 4. So there is a bit of a, you could call it an EXP penalty for bringing in a new character, so you will want to keep your character alive. Question 5, initiative. Individual, group, or something else? For the PCs, they're all on an individual basis. They all roll initiative. For group, typically I will just assume that every enemy, every monster, has rolled a 10 on the initiative. So they're all sort of average. Unless it's a very critical moment in which we have to know, does the vampire get a drop on the player characters, and who goes for the magical dagger first to plunge it into the other person. Then I'll actually roll for the initiative when we have to know who is going first. But otherwise, just for convenience, if the player characters come upon a crypt filled with zombies and ghouls, I just sort of assume that every monster has rolled a 10, and we just jump into the combat. Question 6. Are there critical hits and fumbles, and how do they work? I use the critical hits just as they are in the book. The threat range when in D&D 3.5 and that sort of thing. Question 7. Do I get any benefits for wearing a helmet? Typically I just assume that the helmet is part of the AC of the armor. Like if someone's wearing scale mail, they've got some sort of helmet. Someone's in full plate, of course they have a helmet. I think there's been a few times in game when someone has been wearing a helmet, and just because, you know, maybe it's a monster is dropping down from above, like a piercer or something like that, where because they were wearing a helmet, you know, I gave them their full AC, but it's come up only a few times, I think. Question 8. Can I hurt my friends if I fire into melee or do something similarly silly? Yes, you can. Don't shoot into melee unless you have the proper feats to make sure that Legolas isn't putting arrows in Gimli's back. Question 9. Will we need to run from some encounters, or will we be able to kill everything? Well, it doesn't really make sense when if the encounter goes on the board, you know that you can kill it. You know, it doesn't make sense. If you're a level 4 party and you're going through the Swamp of Sorrows because you're looking for the lotus flower that will cure someone, and you see a black dragon wheeling about overhead, gazing upon its domain and reveling in its glory, you know that you shouldn't start firing arrows into the black dragon. You're level 4. It's just going to kill you. So to keep things realistic, yes, some of the encounters you absolutely should be running away from. If you're level 3, you don't go into the troll forest. Question 10. Level draining monsters, yes or no? I say yes, but I'm also very liberal with levels coming back from a simple restoration spell, or even a lot of bed rest in a temple, just sort of taking in those holy energies. Question 11. Are there going to be cases where a failed save results in PC death? Yes, but very rarely. I'm not going to spring a monster on someone that can kill you with a gaze. Now, Perseus knew, going into the Medusa's lair, he knew that this thing had a gaze that will turn him and his compatriots to stone, so he knew that he had to do something about it. He knew that he had to use his shield as a mirror. So when the characters know that there's a Bodak, or a Medusa, or a Basilisk in this cave, they know what they're getting into, so they have, you know, sort of signed the waiver if they go into this area that they are aware that a failed save may result in them turning to stone or dying outright. And so they prepare appropriately, like buying amulets of negative energy protection or buying the stone to flesh spell or potion, those sort of things. Question 12. How strictly are encumbrance and resources tracked? I do need to keep track of encumbrance because you have to know if a character who's in full plate and he's got his backpack full of gear, you have to know if he's encumbered and he's not at peak efficiency in the combat. As far as resources, if the party's trekking through a forest and they're shooting arrows to hunt wild game, or, you know, something like that, I don't really keep track of the arrows because they're in a forest. They can so easily make more. The character only has to say, oh, as we're bedding down for the night, I create some arrows. Now, if the characters are in the middle of a desert and there's nothing around, then we absolutely need to know how much water, how many arrows, and where everyone's resources are. Question 13. What's required when my PC gains a level? Is there training? Do I get new spells automatically? Can it happen in the middle of an adventure? Or do I have to wait for downtime? I typically, I don't really have training. I assume that when someone is gaining EXP as they're going along in their level, they're just sort of improving themselves and they're sort of learning their trade. And as far as, it's just a small amount of downtime and someone can level up. It's, you know, no massive training required. You've sort of been giving yourself that training. As far as getting new spells automatically, well, obviously wizards need to learn it from a scroll. Sorcerers get it automatically, and clerics will probably have to be taught a spell by a priest or something like that, or, you know, they need to pray and then become divinely inspired. Some sort of scene there where they're learning their new spells. Question 14. What do I get experience for? Overcoming any sort of challenge. If you sneak past the ogre and steal the key that you need, that's EXP. If you and your party clobber that ogre before he clobbers you, that is also EXP. I give EXP for good role-playing, good ideas, just overcoming obstacles in character, or as a player, being a good player and bringing great stuff to the table. That's all EXP. 15. How are traps located? Description, dice rolling, or some other combination. Sometimes the description, a player can suss out that, oh, this looks like a trap from just the description. And sometimes, yes, it comes from a perception roll for dice rolling. Pretty standard stuff with that. Question 16, are retainers encouraged, and how does morale work? I'm absolutely fine with the characters having retainers, but all of my players absolutely hate having NPCs hanging around them, so it doesn't really come up. And as far as how does morale work, back in AD&D, they had a morale stat, and I would roll that, but now I just sort of, if it feels like the monster should be running, or if it feels like this NPC should be running, then they run. Goblins and kobolds will run after they lose, a certain percentage of the party. Something like an elemental or skeletons, they never run. Question 17, how do I identify magic items? There's two ways. An identify scroll or spell that identifies it. The second way is with an appropriate knowledge check. So either Arcana, Religion, Psionics, that sort of thing. I sort of look at that as someone is using their Arcana to look at the runes and see the magical flow of energy across this item, and they're using their knowledge and they're sort of reverse engineering this item, and they're learning exactly what it does. Question 18, can I buy magical items? In most settings, like in medium or low magic settings, no, you cannot. There are no magical item shops. But in higher magic settings, like Eberron or certain areas of the Forgotten Realms, while I wouldn't have a magic shop, there wouldn't be a magical Walmart where you just get a whole sack full of rings of power and ring it up at the register. I figure, why wouldn't a powerful wizard want to make some cash off of their skill? If you're good at something, never do it for free. So a wizard would probably make things when he's on retainer. Perhaps a powerful nobleman says, I will give you 150,000 gold pieces a year, Mr. Enchanter, if you will create magical items for me, my family, and my army. So if the characters are able to procure a magical item from a wizard, it's probably because either the characters have reached such power that they have an enchanter on retainer, or they've done some quest, some great favor for an enchanter, and he says, oh, you rescued my children from the ogre. I will forge for you a magical amulet of protection so that you will be protected just as you have protected my children. But that's not really buying it, I guess that's doing a quest. So, right, typically buying a magical item is the sort of thing that is reserved only for high magic settings and for massively wealthy characters, and even then it's rare. But as far as buying potions and scrolls and other consumable items, I'm way into that. I really like the alchemy. I really like the thought of going to an alchemy shop and looking at the potions and having sort of a emergency kit, or a preparation bag for when you need to go on an adventure. If you know that there's going to be undead, you'll buy holy oils and anoint the head of your mace so that you can smite those skeletons and zombies and they'll burst into flames. Because that's just preparation, always be prepared. It's the motto of adventurers and Boy Scouts worldwide. Question 19, can I create magical items? When and how? Yes, you can create magical items when you have the appropriate spells, skills, and the money to do so, and the time to do so. And I don't have it cost EXP. I don't have the give EXP either, like in 2nd edition. The magical item that you've created is sort of its own reward, so it's just a question of time, money, and resources. And finally, question 20, what about splitting the party? If the party splits, then they split. It doesn't happen very often because we all know that when the party splits in half and I'm DMing for one half, then the other half doesn't have much to do. So that's sort of a metagame concern, and my players don't really do it that much. Also, we all know that when you split the party, now you're at half strength and things become more dangerous. So I don't have a problem with splitting the party. probably because it doesn't come up that much and I don't have to deal with that. So those are the 20 questions. Thank you for watching. Have a good day.